Okay, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, you're welcome. How was the weekend?
It was fine. And you, sir?
Very fine, very fine. Okay, I guess we stopped at tax manager with Express and specifically authentication. We implemented the session authentication, and then we started with the authentication with tokens. So let's continue. I think I did something like okay, this is session out. Let's move to what is happening here. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we're almost done with the registration, user registration, and then what is this? Okay, I think we copied everything and then pasted. So that's what I'm seeing. Looking out. We had our secrets. And then we implemented the user this thing. We signed the user using JWT, the secret, and then it expires in 7 days. Okay, and we tested this out actually, and it worked. Okay, so let's still test it out and see before moving to user login. Let's add a request with method of post and then the URL of yeah. Let's see if it register. Let's send this request with a body of raw and a type of JSON. Okay, I will send username of let's say Chris. This is 6185. And then password of also Sisu, but not 185. Okay, let's just send this request and see what you've got. Send. Okay, well, first of all, start our server. Our server is down. npm run dev to start our server. Okay, so our server is up and running right now. Let's send the request and see. Okay, so we've got our token. So it's actually working. So let's move to user login. And here we have our login function. So we just have to modify some things. Okay, sorry about that. So let's continue with our user login. First of all, modify some things. Here we are not signing the user in with a session, but just a JWT. So what will we do? Okay, we've checked the password, and then the next thing here is to sign the user. So we'll just come here, copy this same thing. Const token is equal to JWT, sign, and we will sign the user's here's the payload. We sign the ID and the username with the secret, and then it expires in 7 days. Then we send back the token and the message of login success. Then the token here, message of login success. So let's test this out and see what we've got. Let's change this to token auth/login like this, and then make this request. Internal server error. So we're getting an error here. And what could that be? What's causing the error? let's check routes for the token out. We have login. Let's comment out this main, or let's just leave it because it's actually working. But then we're getting an internet server error. Same password and oh. This has to be different. Not really. If user already exists, then the login, we have correct password, bcrypt compare. Yes, then JWT sign username token, and then we send back the token. So what's the problem here? Why the internet server error? Let's send it again, see. Okay, let's cross-check our code. Login username, password. We check for the username and the password. Then we check for an old user in our database. And if you find any old user, we send them a message of invalid credentials with a status code of 400, which is a bad request. And then we check if the password is correct. We compare the password with the one in our database. And if it is not correct, we send them a message of invalid credentials. It's a bad request. But if the password is correct, what we want to do is, okay, it's old user, not user. Old user.id, and then old user username. That's where our mistake is coming from. Error, and let's try it out now and see what we've got. Okay, so it's successful and we're getting our token back. So how can we use this token to log a user in? Actually, we are logged in, but we cannot access any resources because the token is available, but we need to use this token to make a request, a GET request, so as to get access to everything associated to our username and our ID. So how do we go about that? Okay, so right now we will create a middleware that checks if a user is logged in or registered. So what we have this token here. We've signed the user here twice in the register and in the login, and I think it's a good idea if we abstract this function. Let's just abstract it and take it up here. We'll do something like function sign user. Then we'll take in the user, and what we will return JWT dot sign. And you know what? Let's just copy this from here and then paste it so we can just modify it like that, like this. Return JWT sign ID, user ID, and then username, username. Okay, then we've got our secret, but we want to make this function almost pure. So we'll just do something like expires in, and then we'll just say lifetime, lifetime, and then we pass this lifetime as a parameter, and the secret also as a parameter. Let's just pass secret, and then lifetime. We want to make this function pure. Okay, so this is what we've got. So in here, we just replace this capital letter secret with a small letter secret, and we're good to go. So we come down here, and then we replace this logic, this whole logic here with our function. Then we say const token is equal to sign user. Then we pass in the user. We pass in our secret, and then we pass in our, let's just hard code this lifetime, or we'll come to our env file, and then we'll add something like JWT lifetime time is equal to, just make it 7 days, like so. Then we come back here, and we get it here. We say something like const life time is equal to process env jwt lifetime, and we're good to go. So we come to our function here and then pass it into our function. Get lifetime, like so. And then we remove this one here. We come down here. Let's just copy this and paste. We'll copy this and paste down here. And instead of user, we pass in an old user. So okay. So we've abstracted our function here, our send user function, and then we can reuse it anywhere without rewriting the whole logic. So let's test it out and see what we got. Send a request, a post request with our credentials. And let's see if internet server error. And what's the error? The secret lifetime, JWT lifetime. Okay. Any errors? JWT lifetime. Okay, let's just restart our server and see what we got. npm run dev. Okay, so let's make the request again once more. Internet server error. Okay, I think it's due to the changes we've made. So let's check out, let's cross-check what we are doing. Secret or secret, and then the lifetime expires in lifetime. The ID, user ID, username. You know what? Let's change this to register and see. See if it will work, so we can figure out what exactly is happening. Okay, we're still getting an internet server error. JW2 sign and ID secret. Okay, let's hard code this secret and then hard code this lifetime so we can be sure of what is wrong with our function here. Now remove this, come down here, and also remove this argument. Okay, so save it and then make a post request again. Okay, user with username already exists. Okay, user with username already exists. That means 285. Okay. So now let's be sure. Maybe it may be the env file or not, but let's be sure. Or let's just see secret, and then we pass in our secret here. Then we'll come down here, and then we'll pass in our secret. Change the username to 3, and then make a request. Okay, it's working. Definitely, it may be this lifetime of a thing. Lifetime, and then expires in the lifetime, like so. And then let's pass in our lifetime. come down here. I'll change this to 4. And then make this request again. I can get a kablooey. We're going to change that to, okay. Let's change this to an actual string. Save it. Restart our server. And then run this again. Send a request. This request. Okay, let's change it to 5. 5. And then send the request again. Internet server error. Okay, it's like I misspelled something. EMV JWT lifetime. Let me check here. EMV live. Okay. And then let's remove this string onto the, it's live, not live. Okay. So it should work now, I think, because we've solved the problem. Let's make this request once more. User with then change this one to 6. Oh, I thought we corrected. Let's restart our server. Why are we still getting a kablooey? Check our EMV file, JWT lifetime. And then if this time around we still get a kablooey, we change that to a string. Change this to 7. Okay, so it's actually working. Every time we modify our EMV file, we have to restart our server. If not, our application will break. It will not actually break, but then we cannot get access to the value in the variable set in the EMV file. Okay, so our function is now working. So what next? Okay, so when we have our token, what we want to do is we want to send a request to this main route so we can get a user's resources and everything attached to the user. Let's say we are dealing with an application where you have to make payments, or you have to subscribe to read articles, or you have to like make payments to access some resources. So we have to do that per user. So what we have to do now is we have to make a request, a GET request to this main route with a token, so that we check the token and then get the user's ID and then access the user's resources in the database, and then associate those resources with the user's ID and then send it back to the user so the user can do whatsoever he or she may love to do with it. So what we do now is we create a middleware function, and then we call it token auth.js, like this. Okay, so what do we want to do in our token auth.js exactly? We want to create a middleware function, and then we'll call it token auth. So what we do, we'll first of all import JWT from JSIM web token, like so. And then we import our status code from HTTP status codes, and then we import our custom error API, like so. Then we add a JS in front. Always remember to add this JS extension so your code doesn't break. Okay, and the next thing now, we create a function, and then say async function. It's actually an asynchronous function. Then we say token auth. Token auth is the name of the function. And then this function will take a request, a response, and then the next function as parameters. What we really want to do inside this function is we want to check, first of all, let's add, let's say, const headers is equal to request headers authorization. I hope I'm not misspelling this thing. Yeah, request headers authorization, like so. And then what we want to do is, let's just call next. and then pass the execution control to the next middleware. Then let's export our token auth as a name export. And then let's come back to our token auth route and then add this to token auth from our middleware token auth.js. Yes, like so. And then let's come back here to our token auth, and then let's log headers. So see what the headers are. And I think we're already logged in. So what we do is we'll copy this token, and then we'll send this request with it. We'll copy this token. Then we'll make a GET request. Okay, let's first of all copy the URL. So we can use it to make a GET request. And then here is a main route, and the request is GET. Then let's go back and copy the token. And then let's come to auth, which is authorization, then come to bearer token, and then remove this one. Paste. Oh, what am I pasting? Let's recopy it. We've not copied it correctly. And then we copy it. Come here and then paste it in our token field. We paste it like so. And then we make a request. We're making a GET request. And we're having an internet server error. And actually, we have our token. The headers and the authorization is returning bearer. And then after bearer, there's a space and then the token. So what we need is not actually the bearer, but we can use that the bearer and keyword to verify if the token, if the headers are available. And then, okay, so what we do now is we check if the headers are available, and if the headers start with bearer, so we can split this into two and then make use of the token returned from the request. So what we do right now is to come here, and then we see if the headers is falsy or headers does not start with, I think you know about the higher order function in JavaScript, the start with function. I don't need to explain that. If you don't know about it, you go and research about it. It's a function that returns true if a particular string starts with an argument passed in or something like that, a subscript or so. So here we have start with bearer. We logged our headers to the console, and then we saw that it started with bearer. So we're checking if the header starts with bearer, we want to use it. And then what we do here, we see if the headers do not start with bearer and there are no headers at all, not if there are no headers or the headers does not start with bearer. Yeah, go ahead. You have a question, right? Yeah, I'm listening. I think you wanted to ask a question.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just want to ask if I'm creating my own or if I'm building my own API. Can I set anybody that want to access my auth route to use AY? I will just say AY instead of bearer. AY space you are token. So instead of using that bearer, can I change the word to my own personal maybe keyword?
Like here?
Yes, instead of putting bearer. So I will just tell all my consumer in the documentation that you put maybe AY, then space their token.
No, you are not. Okay.
I think the confession.
I will answer your question, but right now, this bearer of a thing, you are not in control of it. It's coming together with the token. You understand?
Okay.
So when you modify this and then extract the token from the headers, then you can do whatsoever you want to do with it. But just be patient. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So after we've checked, and if there are no headers or the headers also start with bearer, we will send the user a message. Actually, in here, we throw a new custom error API. of unauthorized. They should log in before accessing any resource. And then the status codes will be status codes of unauthorized, like so. But if we have our headers and our headers start with bearer, what we actually want to do is we want to say const token is equal to, want to extract the token from the headers. So we say const token is equal to headers. Headers is actually a string because we've assigned it to this string. The authorization here is a string. The request is an object. The headers is an object. But then we've created a variable of headers and then assigned it to this authorization, which is a string. So we've extracted this we've converted it to a string. And then we say if there are headers, we want to split it into two. Then we use the JavaScript split function. And then we want to split where there is a space. So we just split and then an empty string or so. The separator is an empty string. Let's call it an empty string. And then we want to return the second part of it. You know, in an array subscript starts with 0, 1, 2, and so on. So instead of saying, okay, token, then we'll say token is equal to token, something like token is equal to token 1. That's want to return the second element in the array. You can just use a shortcut here and then say return the second element in this array. Because when you split it, it converts the whole thing to an array with the first element of the array being bearer and then the second element of the array being the token. So actually what you want to do, you want to use this shortcut and then grab the token from this split function. Okay, so after grabbing this token, what do you want to use? What do you want to do with the token? So we catch errors first, and then catching errors, we use a try catch block, try catch, and then we'll move our next function inside of this try. Or let me just remove it and then we'll write it later. So after moving our function, we say const user is actually JWT verify. You know, we signed it earlier with JWT, so only JWT that can verify. And we cannot verify this user with a different secret. We have to verify this very user with the same secret we added to our env file. So let's get access to this, our secret. Then we'll say const secret is equal to process env session secret. I actually named this section secret because we're implementing the session authentication. Okay, so we've gotten access to our secret and now we want to use it. JWT verify. What do you verify? We want to verify this token with this secret that we used to sign it. Okay, so now after verifying it, then we will add the user to the request user. We add an object to the request object, and this object will contain the user. And then after verifying this, when we sign this initially, sorry, let's go to our controllers and have a look. When we sign this, we sign the user with the payload of the user ID and the username. Yes, we signed this payload with the payload was a user ID and then username, the secret, and then lifetime. But actually, we don't need a lifetime because we specified the lifetime initially when the user logged in. So when they make a GET request with this very token, the lifetime is already there for 7 days. The user will persisted in the browser for 7 days. And after 7 days, they will be logged out and then they will have to log in before accessing any resource. So what we want to do here is we want to verify that this user is who they claim to be. So what we will do here, we come to our middleware, and then we verify the token with this secret. And note, if you make any mistake or you supply a different secret, you will not be able to verify this user. So you store your secret in places where they can be accessible to every user. Every user that use that secret to sign it or credentials will be able to use the same secret to verify those credentials and then get used to their resource. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to add a user object to the request object. You know, the request is actually an object, so we can add the user object to this request object by saying request user is equal to ID user ID, and then we get access to the username as well, and we say username is equal to user ID, and then we'll close this, a comma, the username username, like so. And then we've added this request user to this we added this user object to this request object. So what we want to do now is, if there's any error, we do the same thing. We throw the new custom error API with the message of unauthorized, and then status code of unauthorized, which is a 403. Is it 403 or 401? Okay, 401. Okay, like so. So we've successfully implemented our token out, but then we need to call our next function so that this middleware function can be able to and then pass control to the next function. So we say next, and I think we're done here. Okay, so let's move over to our routes and then add this to all the routes we want to protect. Like, we want to protect the main route. First of all, we'll come here and then we'll add this. We already added it to the main route. So let's make this request again. First of all, let's check the content of the main route. So in this main route, we get access to the, but then we're getting access to the request user, no request user session user, request user, like so. And then we extract the ID and the username from the request user object, and then we make a request to the database to fetch the user's tasks, only the user's tasks, and then we add it to the user object, the ID, the username, and the task, and then we send it back to the user so they can be able to use it. And this here is the work of our front-end developers. The front-end developers will grab the token and then make a request using the window fetch function, and then they will grab this information for the user and then supply it to the user so they can be used to display the username, use the ID to make subsequent requests, and the token to make subsequent requests, and then all of that. But then I think at first, you are not front-end developers, you are back-end developers. Like me, I'm a full stack, so I know everything that is going on. So API design becomes simple for me because I've got the experience and I know how to make it like look fun and then all of that. So all we need to do here is come down here. Okay, this is our main route. Okay, let's try making a request and see. If we're not logged out, I think, okay, we're not logged out, and then we have our information. And this user does not have any tasks. We have the ID, the username, but then there are no tasks. We have tasks in our database, but this user has no tasks. So what we want to do is, okay, let's actually add some tasks specifically for this user. So let's go back to our tasks. First of all, let's go to our route task and then add, let's remove the session auth and then add token auth. Token auth. And then for the get tasks as well, remove it and then add token auth, like so. Okay, so we want to, in the controllers, in the task, here we have access to, and then user, request body delete task, request user, and we restructure our code in a minute or so. Okay, so this request user has a user object, and then this user, inside this user object, we destructure the ID. and then extract the ID from the, okay, let's say ID, and then let's set it to user ID like so. So we can, okay, now we want to test this for the create task. Let's grab this out of this and then make a different object, which is we have an ID of a user ID, which is equal to request user. Okay, I think this is all for here. ID, user ID, and then we can just pass in the user ID without having to do some kind of get tasks. Here also, we can just grab this const ID is equal to request user, and then we can default this to user ID like so. So we don't have to worry ourselves. So what is actually going on here in our middleware? After verifying this, our middleware will pass control to the next function. And in this case, the next function here can be the route function, sorry, the mean route, which is also a function, and then the create task or delete task or whatsoever. But we have to achieve this by passing this middleware. As you can see the middleware. Before this request get past this middleware will have to verify the user and then pass control to the next function, which is to the next middleware, which is get tasks. And then this, when it's passing the control, it passes the control with the request user object, which contains the ID and then the username. So we can then make use of it in our get tasks. So what we're going to do now, we're going to make, let's try making a get request first. Let's copy this URL, paste it here, and then make a get request to tasks. And then first of all, we'll copy this token because we're still logged in, and then we'll paste the token in here. And then later when we are dealing with REST API design, we'll talk about environmental variables in Postman and all of that. But for now, let's just copy this token and then come here and then paste it. Okay, we've already got the token. Okay, so now we want to make this request. So you get tasks. You can very well see that every request that I'm making, that's to any route that added the token out middleware, I will have to send the request with this token. If not, okay, let's do away with this token and then send this request. Unauthorized. We are getting unauthorized because we're not authorized, because we're not sending any token. And when the middleware checks for the headers does not contain any token. So actually, you will get an unauthorized message, except you send the request with this very token. So let's send the request again. And then we don't have any task. So let's change this to a post request and then create some tasks, just a single one. And this is raw and the body of JSON, JavaScript object notation. The full meaning of JSON is JavaScript object notation. Okay, so let's create the title of our task is let's say write unit tests for the mean route, like so. And then the description of our task should be write unit tests using mocha and super test, like so. Okay, so now let's send the request and see what we've got. Oh, wow. So we've gotten our task with the user ID, and this is our user ID. The user that is creating the task, the ID is actually associated with the task, and then the ID of the task, the title, description, completed, and then all of that. So now let's make a request to the main route once more. We already have our token here, so let's make this request. Okay, And now we have our user, the username of 785, and then the password of this. Okay, so now let's log in with a different user. I think we should just change this to 6, since we have 6 in our database, and then just log in. And then we have something like login success or so. The message is login success actually. And we're going to be changing that in a minute. We'll practice how to design our API. So we've got access to our token. So let's paste it in here. Is it? Okay. Here. Do away with this. And then paste that. And then make this request again. And this time around, you have a user with this ID and the username of 685 and not 785 anymore. And then the task array here is empty because this user doesn't have any task. Okay. I think we are done with token authentication and authorization. Okay, so I want us to refactor our code to follow the best practices in developing and testing APIs. So we'll go back and start with our controllers. And first of all, we're not going to be using the session auth anymore. So everywhere there's a session auth, we replace it with a token auth. Because after this very topic, we're going into security and data validation. So we use our token auth button session. Token, like so. Okay, so let's do away with our session auth and then clean up our file. And then down here, okay, we've got all of this. Save. And what if you want to get access to all the user stacks? If you want to get access to all the user stacks, you can just remove this thing, save your file, come back and make a GET request, like so. You can just make a GET request. But then if you come back to the main route, come back to this main route, and then remove all of the whole of this object where user ID, like so, save it, and then make a GET request to the main route again. And you can see a user has some tags associated to his account. This tax does not belong to this user because you can check out the user ID, which is 4EF. The last 3 digits is 4EF. And if you check here, you see 9B1 and then F4C, which does not belong to the user. So in the case where you want to fetch all the tags, but not only the tags associated to that user, you can just modify your request and then everything will fall in place. So let's just put this back, save it, come back to our route, and then put it back as well, token auth. And our code should work as expected. Okay, so now what we want to do right now is we'll refactor our code, and we are done with this. We've refactored our code here. Okay. Then we'll come to our token auth, and we only need this middleware here. I think this is cool, and we're good to go. So going back to controllers and then token auth. I think this also is good to go, but we'll refactor this next. In some seconds, we'll be doing that. Okay, but for now, this is good to go. And then we can even modify our JWT to actually use our secrets. But let's leave the function like this. It's a good practice. We don't want to remove this and then pass in this secret and lifetime. We want everything that is used in this function should be passed as a parameter and be accessed later, be used as arguments. We don't want to break that law and then if you want to understand all about this, you want to understand it in depth, you have to go into studying and learning JavaScript functional programming. It's very important. You understand immutability better, and then ensuring pure functions. It's a very good practice. So let's just leave it like this. And then everything here, I think it's okay. I think this is all we need to do here, request user and all of that. Okay, so now we go back to our task. Request user. We've got the queue, the completed. And then if you don't want to do this, if completed, you can actually say completed. Then you can actually say is completed exactly equal to the string of true. Then you say true, or you say false. But then we can change this in a short while. If you don't want to mess up your code by converting this to JSON pass, you can just do something like this, because completed is the request is coming in as a JSON object and a JSON string with this, so we can actually convert it. If it's true, then true. But if it comes as a string false, return false as a string, and then you have your false, and then your code will work as expected without writing additional code here. So let's remove this, and then we're good to go. And we've refactored that, and then we got our ID from. Okay, so now we're not dealing with the session out, and then we will modify the session out in a second. In a second, please. Pardon me. In a second, and then we have const ID is equal to request user, like so. And then we default this ID to user ID, because we already have a task ID coming in from the request params. So we just say user ID, and then we come down here. Where else do we need a user ID? Request user, we've modified that one. And then here as well, down here, then remove this, because from the request user object and not from the request body anymore. And then the delete task will modify this. And up here, get task, we'll modify this. And get all the tasks, we'll modify this as well. So let's come back to our session out. Okay. I think in our session out, we're good to go, but then let's go back to our session out middleware. In our session out middleware, we actually assign the request body user to request. Then we want this to be uniform to request user, so that if in any case we change our token out to session out, our code will still work the same. We don't want our code to break in a situation where we want to test our session authentication, and then we change the middleware in this route. Let's say we come here in the task, and then we change this to session out, and then we have to go and then rewrite code for that to work. We don't want that. So we want this to be uniform. So we just want to assign this user to this request user, so that we can pass it to the next middleware. And this is fine. It's actually working. And that's all for that. And what else do we need to do? In refactoring our code, token out, verify token secrets, and all of that. Tasks, verify tasks, token out. Okay, so now let's check our index. Sorry, yeah, our index JS5. We have our tasks, and then we have our token out, our session out. These are application level middleware. And then we have router level middleware. Let me remind you, if you come to our route, here is our router level middleware. And in our router level middleware, we're utilizing this middleware to get hold of this router, and only this router. If we remove this, and then any middleware passed in here will only be applied to this specific to the specific router in which it is passed to. So that is the router level middleware. And then we'll come back to our controllers. In our controllers, we have token out. And then we have a route level middleware. Sorry, am I mistaken? Okay, this is actually a route level middleware, and this one is a router level middleware. imported here, and then app.use application level middleware. Okay, so that's it for that. I think our code, it's working and then good to go. And then we'll come down here to our env, and then we'll change this session secret to simply secret to make it our uniform like this. Save, and then stop our server, and then restart it again so that our env file will take effect. Come back here. Do we need any session secrets here? We change this to secret, and then this to also secret. And then we come down here. Where do you, okay, we have our secret here. We change this to secret. I think that's all for that. And then let's move to our route. And our route, we're not using any secret in our route. So we'll move to our controllers. Let's check our middlewares first. And then in the middleware, we're using a secret here. And then we've changed that. In our session out middleware, we're not using any secrets. Not found, no secrets. Error handler, no secrets. And our async wrapper, we're not using anything at all. Then let's come to our controllers, our token out. Let's change it to secret, like so. I think that's all. Then our task, we're not using any secrets. We're just using our route level middleware. And then in here, we've got secrets, session out, no secrets, no secrets. Okay, so there's one more thing. I think we have to, we change the request session user to request user. So what we have to do here, we will have to change something as well in our main route. Okay. Add user request is request user and not request session user, like so. And I think that's all for that. Request user. Okay. I think we've modified our code and it's working perfectly. Okay. So in our in review, what we did actually was we first of all implemented our register functionality, and in here we got access to our username password from the request body of which the user is sending. And in our case, we are using Postman to send this request, and then we grab our username and our password, and then we check. If there's no username or password, we will send a user a message of invalid credentials with a status code of 400. Is it 400? Yes, 400, which is bad request. And then if the username, if the length of the username is less than 5, we send them a message, user must be at least 5 characters. And then I think there's actually an error here. Status codes, what is it? Bad request. Yeah, bad request. And also here, status codes, bad request, like so. If the password length is less than 6, which then password must be at least 6 characters, and like that. So we check for the user in our database, and if the username is already in our database, it means the user already exists. So we send them a message with username, the username they're trying to register with already exists, with a status code of bad request. But if the user doesn't exist, we want to actually hash the password with a random string of 10 random strings. And then we say user is equal to await. We save the user to the database. And then we want to return only the ID and then the username to optimize our query. We don't want to return everything. And then we assign the request session user to the user. Sorry, we assign the user to the request session user so we can get access to it in our middleware, and then assign it to the request user and then send to the user so they can store it in their session storage in the browser to make subsequent requests with the token being sent to the browser. Okay, so now on our login, we did the same thing. I think I'm actually explaining the session, which I'm supposed to be explaining the token. And in the token, we were not using any session. We're actually signing the user with bcrypt, sorry, with JWT. We check, we're following the flow, the same flow in the register functionality in the session authentication. And if we don't have a user, we actually save the user to the database, and then we return the ID and the username. And then after returning it, we sign the user. What we are actually doing by signing the user is we are encrypting the user's data, the user's credentials. We don't want them to be just like that. We're actually encrypting we first of all encrypted the password, saved it to the database so that if actually you, let's say by mistake or intentionally you are a hacker and you hack into our database, you cannot be able to decrypt the user's password. So you don't steal the user credentials and then steal the user's money if in case they are storing their credit card details in our database or something like that. Okay, so then we return the user with the ID and the username, and then we sign the user, we encrypt their credentials with this token, and then we send back the token to the client. So then the client will now make a request with this token. In our main route, we make a request with the token, of which we've created a middleware that will handle this request for us. And then we make a request, and then when the request gets to the middleware will check for the token and then try to decrypt that token with the secret we used to encrypt it. So after decrypting it, it will get access to the user's ID and the username. And then before sending this request back to the client, this main route will use the user ID to fetch the user's tax, and then we send the user name, user ID, and the tax associated to that user account back to the user, so the user can then modify the tax or do whatsoever they wish to do with it. Okay, so I think that is all for authorization and then authentication. We actually authenticated our application and then add authorization so that users can be able to only get access to the tax that are associated to the account, and that is authorization. Okay, that's sweet and very, very simple. I hope it's simple. Yeah, it's very simple, very simple. Okay, and that is it for user authentication and authorization. Then next on our list, we have data validation and security. It is very, very important. That is where encrypting password before sending to databases and then encrypting user credentials before sending to the client. It's very, very important. So that in case you send a request with a wrong password or username, it will give you back a cabri. Okay, so in this case, let's take a look at data validation and security. And wow, we have a bunch of things in the data validation and security module. We have the data validation with Express Validator, authentication and authorization principles, handling sensitive data, preventing cross-site scripting, XSS, and then rate limiting, secure headers using Helmet, and then HTTPS. In this case, our servers where we are deploying our application automatically handles this for us. We don't need to, worry about that. Once we deploy our application, the servers automatically handles this for us in production. And then error handling. We've been handling errors all this while. But when we get to that, we will point out where we're handling our errors and where we're avoiding the breakdown of our application. Because if you don't handle errors, your application will break in production and then, oops. If you're running a business, your business will go down. The application will be down. Your users will not be able to access their products or their data or whatsoever, and then you will lose a bunch of customers who switch to another service, and then you have to start all afresh and then try to convince them that you've added a security measure, or added error handling to your application, and it will not break again. You promise them, but they will say, no, why didn't you do that the first time? We're out and done. Okay, so let's dive into data validation and with Express Validator. Okay, so in this case, I will not be heading over to the official site, the official website. All I will do is I will urge you to do that. I don't want to teach you how to read documentation. You have to do that all by yourself and learn how to read documentation all by yourself. So actually what I'm going to do is I will just install the Express Validator, and I will teach you how to use it. And I will do that to the best of my ability so that you can be able to understand Express Validator and how to use this Express Validator. Okay, so what first are we going to do? Let's stop our server, clear our terminal, and then install npm install Express Validator, like so. And then hit enter. Let's wait for it to install. Okay, so you are not beginners. I keep saying this, you are not beginners, you are intermediates. So what I want to do is I will just jump into using this. So you can, if you want to understand, I will try to explain everything. And then if you want to understand how this is working behind the scene, it's actually a library, an external library. So when I use it and you want to understand in depth how it works behind the scene, you head over to the official website and then try to like figure out things, try to check out how everything works under the hood, and then try to read their documentation and understand very, very well. Okay. So first of all, where we're going to start from, we're going to be starting from our authentication. We want to validate user input. We don't want to submit, we want to remove all this manual coding of validating user input and then password length and then username length. We'll remove all of this and then do that automatically. Okay, so we'll come down to our routes. Then token auth. No. Is it token auth? Yeah, let's just use the token auth. Okay, so since we'll be using it throughout our application, we're not going to be touching the session auth. I just use that to show you how authentication with sessions it's been done. So first of all, we import an empty object from Express Validator. So what do we need? We need the check function and what else? Just the check function. Okay. So let's go ahead and import the check function. If we need other things, we'll import them, but for now, let's just use the check function. Okay. So this is actually a middleware. So we want to place that in between our route to register and then our function, the next middleware, the register middleware. We want to place that here so that it will capture the incoming request, validate user inputs before passing it to the function to actually do its work. So what we want to do is we want to check, we do it manually and then we automate this. We don't have to be writing code all over to, we clean up our code base. So what we want to do here, we have to check, what are we checking for? As you can see, check field, a string or an array of field names to validate / sanitize. Create a middleware / validation chain for one or more fields that may be located in any of the following: request body, request cookies, request headers, and then request parameters. The last one is a request query. I will look about, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's first of all create this middleware for our register route. And then we'll come over here and then we'll say, what check is the username? Okay, let's add a comma first. Okay, so what exactly do you want to check in our username? Okay, let's go back to our controllers. And here, first of all, we're checking if the username or the password is not empty, if the field is not empty. But if it's empty, we'll send the message to the client, invalid credentials with the bad request status code. Okay, but in this case, we do this differently. It's a chain. It's actually an object. it's a function with many built-in objects. So what we want to do here is we want to call the first one. It should not be empty. You see, not empty, like this. And then with message, and I will give them a message of what is our message here? Okay, let's just say, let's give them a short one. Username required, like so, username required, and then save it. Okay, so if your username field is empty, you receive this message, but then we need to handle this. So how can we handle this? We need to handle these errors in our controllers, because if we don't handle the errors, then we won't be able to get the message, and then everything will be working as if we've done nothing. So let's go to our controllers, open your controllers, token out, and then come up here. You come up here, and let's say immediately after the where you destructured your username and password from the request body, and then you see const errors. Errors is equal to validation result, which is coming from the express validator, like so. And let's check where it's imported. Let's take it up. All the third-party modules should be imported first before our own modules in our application. Also, where are we? Okay. And this is equal to validation result request, like so. And then we check. The errors is actually an array. It's an array of errors. So I want to check if the array is not empty. I want to send them to the client. If errors is not empty, it's not empty, because if it's empty here, to return true, but then we add a false if errors is not empty. Okay, so if the errors is not empty, what we want to do is throw a new custom error API, like so. And then we'll say, no, we're not throwing a new custom error API. I think what we want to do here is we'll return a response status code of 400, which is a bad request, and then a JSON object of let's say errors. Errors is actually an array, and then errors dot array, like so. Okay, so now we've added this. Let's start up our server npm run dev and then test this out before we'll continue to add some more functionalities. And then let's do away with this one. Let's just comment it out first, and then come up here. Let's do as if we want to register, but then we reduce our username to like 3 characters, and then we'll send this request. Okay, let's cancel the request. I think it will work. Let's make it empty first because we're not checking the characters for now. Let's send an empty request. Provide all input values. Token out. Okay, this is login and not register. Let's change it to register and then make the request again. And here we've got, let me just expand this a little bit. Here we got an array of errors. We have the type field, and then the value is empty. We've got no value in it. And then the message is username required. And then the path is username, the location is body. As you can see then, the client can handle this successfully. You can just say errors.map. You can map the errors and then get access to the error message and then the value. And then they can do whatever they want to do with it in the client. But in this case, we've done our part. Okay, so let's come back here. That is working. Then we'll do away with this. And then we can even do away with our username length, and then password, because we'll be checking that in a minute, like so. Okay, so let's come back to our route. Where is it? Is it talking out? Yes. And then we see we've got something else to check here. And what are we checking? We check if the password, I mean the length of the username and the password. We check for the length of the username, and then later we check for the password and also check for the length of the password, and then we check if it is falsy or not. But first of all, let's check for the length of the username. That is length, and then we pass in an object of a minimum 5. We want our username to be a minimum of 5 characters. So if you input less than 5 characters, you will get an error message. And you have to modify your request. And then we have to send a message for this with message. And this message should be username, like username must be at least 5 characters long, like this. Wow, wow, wow. This is sweet. Okay, so now if you send this request again, we still get the same error. But this time around, we're getting 2 errors. The second one is saying username must be at least 5 characters long. Okay, so now let's go back to our code and then make, okay, our postman and make our request body. Let's make this SESU. This is 4 characters long. And this time around, we get only 1 error in our array, but this error will be the second one and not the first one. So let's send the request again. Okay, this time around, we've got only 1 error with field, type field, value, sesu, just 4 characters, and then the message is username must be at least 5 characters long. Okay, so it's working as expected. That is sweet. And then we want to do this for also our password. Let's check our password. Password, it's coming from the request, password. And then we say password required. And then the minimum of the password character is 6. And then with message, username, password must be at least 6 characters, like this. Okay, so let's now test for our password. Let's reduce our password to a kind of 4 characters. And then, okay, let's even make it empty and then send this request. Okay, we've gotten a response. And in this case, we're getting a whole bunch of errors, like 3, because the password is empty, password required, and then another one, password must be at least 6 characters long. Okay, let's make our password the same sesu, and then send this request again. In this case, what we have here is errors, value, sesu, and then message username must be at least 5 characters, and then the password is password must also be at least 6 characters. That's sweet. And then let's complete this and then see if it's working properly, like so. Oh, no, I don't want to save this request. And then send the request again. User hand, and now we're getting user with username says to already exist. Okay, so our code is working as expected. That is actually, sorry about that. It's actually sweet. Okay. Now, I don't like this. You see what's going on here? Our file is getting bigger and bigger. And what I normally do is I don't really like my file exceeding 80 lines of code. And that is a kind of rule. You must not have more than 5 functions in a file, and your file should be at most 80 lines. That is if the code you are writing will not be compiled or it will not be translated, like this kind of code. Actually, it will be compiled, but then if you are not writing code for other users, if you're not writing a library or you are not writing a utility function, you are using a library to write your own code, then your code shouldn't exceed lines. So this is getting bigger and I don't like it. So what we want to do is we want to create a middleware that will handle this for us. Wow. It's becoming interesting, getting more and more interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so let's go to our middleware folder and then create a function of auth validator, authentication validator, because we need to do this for our tags also. So in our auth validator, we'll import, let's first of all import empty object from express validator, and then we import check, and then validation results, like so. So what we want to do, we want to come over down here, and then we see, you can say something like const validation register. You can call it validation register or validation dictionary, or whatsoever you want to call it, validation register. And then we come down here to our routes and then copy all of these. Copy this. After copying it, no, sorry, copy these, then comment it out. Let's stop our server first, and then save it, comment it out. Come down to our middleware, our auth validator, paste it here. Did I copy everything? No, I didn't. Come back, copy this one too. Auth validator, paste this one down here. And then we'll uncomment it like this. So we've gotten our validation register. So what next? We'll create a middleware function that will handle the validation for us instead of writing it in all of our function, our register function, login function, and other ones. We'll automate this. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to say const validate auth, like so, and it's a function, actually an asynchronous function. Then we'll say async. It will take a request, a response, and a next, like every other middleware. And actually an arrow function. So we give it an arrow, and then we'll open our curly braces. Then we say const errors is equal to validation results. Where is it? Validation results. And then we want to validate our request, like so. Validate our request. Is it queue? Okay, our request. So after validating our request, we want to check, is our errors, is it empty? If errors is not empty, what do you want to do? We'll do the same thing we did, return response status code of 400, which is a bad request. JSON, want to send a JSON with errors, because it's an array, so it's not just an error, but errors. And then we convert our errors to an array, like so. And after that, what do you want to do? You want to call the next function. Next, like this, so that you pass the execution context to the next middleware. And in this case, it may be the register middleware, the login middleware, which is also a function. So we export our validation register, and then we can call this auth validation register, because we're going to be writing a task validation register as well. Then we call it auth validation register, and then validate auth, like this. we export it so we can use it down here. Okay, so now we go to our route in our token. After commenting this out, we come here. Then we get access to our. Did I make this a capital letter? Not that, auto validator. Yes, it should be small, like so. Skipping. Okay, so we get access to our auth validation register, our validate auth, like so, a comma. Okay, so I'm come back to our controllers in the token auth. Where exactly did we write this? Here. Let's first of all comment it out and try to make the same request we were making with when we did not have a custom middleware. Okay, now let's go ahead and make a request with an empty username. What do we have? So I'll go giving us a cabli? No. Okay, it's working. Username required. And then we give it a short username. Send it again. And then this time around, username must be at least 5 characters. Okay. Empty password. And we got 2 errors. Password required. And let's give it a short password. SESU. Send a request again. And then in this time around, 2 errors. Password might be at least 6 characters long. And then then let's complete our request with SESU. And this one also SESU. And then send the request. User with username SESU already exists. Okay, that's cool. So our code is working as expected. So let's cut this one. So our register function is as minimal as any function can be. Can you see this? And then let's remove this validation result. So make our code cleaner. This is our register function. And then we can even comment it. Then register function, or you can call it a middleware, anyone you want to see. Then you can come down here, then login function for clarity. Because you may want to access your code in the next 2-3 years, and you'll be asking, what did I write? When I wrote it at first, I and God understood it, but right now, only God understands this code. And you'll be like, oh my God, it's not going to work. And then the mean function, or you see, yes, the main function, like this. So when you get access to your code, once you get here, oh, where does the register function start from? You say, oh, this is the register function. Then you go across, you go over it. When you get to this place, oh, this is the login function starts from here, and then that's it. Then you come up, and we'll remove this one here to make it more cleaner, because we'll be using the middleware in the login as well. Yes, like this, and like this. Okay. It's as minimal as possible. Then you come up here and then you see, yes, the user is an object. And let's document this one very well so that it's more confusing than the rest. Then the secret is a string. The lifetime is also a string. And it returns a string, which is our token. Or it returns a token. Just put in your token like this. It returns a token. Okay. This is sign user. See, then you can give it a description of this function, text in a user, a secret, a lifetime, or let's say a JWT lifetime. Okay, expires in and returns a JWT token. Like this. Okay. So we've successfully documented our function, the sign user function. It takes in a parameter, which is object. A user is an object. It's an object, and then the parameter secret is a string. The lifetime is a string, and it returns a token like this. So with this, by seeing this, you know, oh, this is what this function is doing. That's clean. Then you come down here, and then we've documented this. And then I will do this for only this file. You can go to the session out and then do that by yourself. And that would be cool. Okay. And then in this case, we've got a problem. Not actually a problem, but our API is somewhat confusing. It's confusing in the sense that we are, when we sign a user, what we are returning here is either a token or a message. And then up, down here, actually returning a token and a message. But in here, we are only returning a message. Okay, so I think we modify our API. If the user gets an error, this kind of error, the user should only get a message with a status code. But if the user gets this kind of error, I have to go with this error is a kind of different from the other one we're checking, invalid credentials. And then let's go back to our middlewares, our error, and then check out our custom error API. Okay, this is message. Okay. And then okay. Errors. Auth validator. Inside our auth validator, if this is returning errors, then the token should be null, like this. Okay, now let's go back to our token auth. Do away with this one. I can see this is way minimal. It's even an inline. So we can copy this, bring it over. But the login, we kind of we don't need to check for the password, the length of the password, and then if the password is what we need to check if the username or password is empty. Okay, so this is where we have we can change this one to register auth validation register. Register auth validation register, like so. Okay, so now we come down to our routes, and then we'll remove this, and then we'll make this a register. We'll make it like this. Then we'll remove, we don't need the check. Remove the check. Then remove this one. Save it. Application, it's working now. Then let's go back to our middleware for the auth validator. Copy this register. Paste it again. And then do away with the minimum length and the message like this. Also do away with the minimum length of the password and the message. And then change it to login auth validator. Like this. Okay. It needs a comma. Like this. Okay. Then export login auth validator. Then you bring it down to your route. And inside of the login, you copy this, paste it. And before this, put your login auth validator, like so. Okay. So this should only be checking for the username, if the username is falsy or the password is falsy. We don't need to check for the length because we're not registering a user. We're only trying to log in a user, and the user details is already in our password. And all we need to do is to check if they're supplying a username or password. So if they supply a valid username and password, we automatically log them in. But if there's no password, then they would send them this message. Okay, so that's sweet. And then we make another middleware of task validator. Task validator JS. And then we make it faster. We come down here to auth validator, and then we copy everything inside the auth validator and then take it down to the task validator. We'll make some changes. We'll make this a task get task validation register. Then we change this to a task. Then we say task title required. And then the minimum of the task title should be four characters. And then we say task title must have at least 5 characters long. Yes. And then we check for the task description. Then we say task description required. And then we make the task description to have a minimum characters of 20. And then we say we say task. Okay, task description must have at least 20 characters long. Okay. Now, there's what we call, I've actually forgotten the name, but you can say something like const cars is equal to const description characters. Description characters is equal to 20. And then you can say description characters, and then you can change this to template literals to interpolate this these description characters like so. And then you put our description characters so that anything you change here will take effect immediately. And that's a bit in some code bases. If you had code these values or this value here, you get an error. You have to declare it, assign it to a variable, then bring in a variable. And that's a good coding practice. You can do this as well. You can just copy it, paste it. Let me just do it for this one. And then task, then you make it 4. And then you make it task like this. Then you interpolate it here. And then make at least, oops, what am I doing? Do something like at least task. And then let's take it up because it's first to make our code more readable. Okay, so I think we're done with this one. And then we say, this is get tasks. And this one here will be get get task validation register tasks. And this one should be one task. And then here we are checking, we're not using check, or we're using, okay, let's go back to our controllers now and check something. If we want to get a single task, what are we getting? What are we using? We're using the params. Okay, let's come down to our task validator and then add something like param, and the param is coming from express validator. And then we'll add ID. We're simply setting ID. Then we say dot to that is already a string. So what would we need to do? Or let's just say, okay, let's say the ID to, let's just find something. If the ID is an integer, we can convert it to a string. I don't think we need anything. Okay, let's leave this as an empty array just for demonstration purpose. And then we'll copy this, say const create task, create task what? Validation register is equal to this array. And then if you want to create a task, what are we using? So you know what you are doing here. No, task. We're actually getting access to request body, and then just the request body. So we can come down here and do something like body, like this, to validate the whole body. Or we can check the task. This one is create task. This is create. It is not get. Sorry for this. Create. And then get. What are we checking from the get? Get task. You don't think if we need to check anything. Get task, ID, request params. And the ID is already a string. So we don't need to check. Or should we check? Okay, let's do something like let's reason together. We're trying to see. Oh, let's leave that. In fact, let's just validate the create task, and then let's use this one. But if in case you want to validate the params, you can say param, and then the field, let's say is the ID dot, maybe you want to say is empty. Great. I've gotten something to do with it. Let me just cut this and then get task, and then we'll add it here. So, like this, that with message ID is required to fetch a task, to get a task, like this. Yes. And then what about okay, the get task. This is for the get task, and then we get tasks, because we need something, get tasks. Then we need to check from doubt is the query parameters from the express validator, And then what do you want to check? We want to check the title. Okay, let's say the title first, that this is not empty, not is empty. Okay, if it's empty, then with this message, okay. If this also is empty, and then we want to give it with message of no, not empty, because I'm using this to query, to sort our tasks. So if it's empty, you see, we don't need a message here because the title is optional. Then we say dot trim. If it is not empty, then we'll only trim it. And then we check the query, we check completed dot not empty. If it's not empty, dot to Boolean. And we don't need to do that manually. If the completed it's not empty, then we want to convert that true or false that is coming in form of a string to a Boolean. Okay, so now what we do here is export. We'll come here, we'll clear the air. Let's first of all clear the air. And this validate function validates task. Will not change. If there are any errors, to do the same thing, do the request, nothing is going to change. But this time around, tasks, or let's say task. But the problem here is we are getting the task. What are we sending here is a task. We're also sending back, here is data. And then here is task, or here it's tasks. Okay, so in that case, let's just generalize it and then see this one, task validator. Just is tasks is null. Let's just make it a tasks. And then let's export. And then we'll get back to our task. And in this case, we'll say errors is null. And here also, task errors is null. Then down here, task and a message. I don't think, let's do away with this message. And you see errors is null. And then down here as well, just take your database skin. If there's an error, then we say errors. Errors is the task cost, like this. And then let's do away with this one. Do away with this. Errors. Then let's, if there's no task, then this will not execute. We shouldn't get an error. But then here we say task, and then comma, errors, task cost. Wow, that's sweet. That's sweet. That's sweet. Okay, that is if there's the error, they will do something like task, like this. But if no error, then we'll say no. Error should be no, and then the task should return the task, like this. Okay, even do like task is a task, and then task else no. We want to handle errors properly. Well, in the case where we have errors, I think we still have much more time. In the case where we have errors, but then we don't have task and we don't know what will happen. Maybe our app will break or we don't want to test that. So we just want to be sure what we get back. But in a case where if there's a task, we return the task and then the errors will be null. But in a case where there are errors and there are no tasks, we return null for the task. And this is a very kind of a good practice. That is sweet. Okay, so now let's go back to task validator. And then we export all of these, create task validator. Okay, let's see. Create, and then get task, then get tasks like this. Okay. Let's come back to our route in the task. And then, okay, let's talk about this. So when do we want to check? Because a user must be authenticated before he or she can go ahead and fetch tasks. So that should come after the token auth, which is get tasks, and then validate task. Did I not export that? I think I did not. Okay, validate task. It should be last. Let's make it an order. Validate task like this. Okay, let's go back to our token here. Validate. No, task. Validate task, and then we'll copy. No, we'll not copy anything. We get this here is a get task. Then validate task. No, get task validation, get task, a single task like this. Then a comma here. Okay. Then down here, create task. And then in here we have is create task, yes. And then validate task, comma. Okay, and I think we are done. Look at all our middlewares lining up. We want a user to be authenticated before they will be able to fetch task or create task or whatsoever. Okay, so now let's go back to, okay, first of all, 785. I can remember we created the task with 785, and then the password was it successful? Okay, let's try to log in, not register, please. Log in. Let's try to log in. Okay. No. I'll have some little work to do here as well. Let's come back to our token auth. Do away with this message. They say errors is null. Come up here. Say errors is null. Because a client may want to check where there are no errors, then want to do something. So we want to make our API as generic as possible, so they can anyone can use it, and then something like that. We need to come down to our middleware auth validator, and then in here, okay, token null. Okay, we already did that. Okay, so let's sign in again, then see what we got. Wow, I got errors null, and then the token here is okay. In a case where we want to, okay, let's do like this, and then send the request again. Invalid credentials. Are you sure that's what I want to get? Or I didn't do that very well? Okay. Do away with this. No? Okay. We're just checking for the password. Leave the password. Yes, that's what I want to get. Now we're getting the token. The token here is null, and then the errors, we're getting an errors with password required, and that's what we want. Okay, and then let's see, say so, and then send the request again so we can get our token. Then let's copy this token to our main route. Where is it? Yes, our main route, and then do away with this one and paste this one, and then send a request because we're already logged in. And we have ID 785, and we've got a task. That is sweet. So what do we want to do now? Okay, we want to get, okay, let's say we want to create a task, which let's say the title of this task is less than 4. Okay, let's send, because we authenticated task now. And then we got errors, task title required. You're supposed to create task title required. Let's check our middleware, because it's supposed to show the length and then not the, it's not empty. It's length, that's characters, that's one. But then why is it saying, okay, let's empty it completely. Task title required. Okay, 2 errors, sorry, 2 errors. Task title must be at least 4 characters long. Okay, and it's where, let's just do something like that and then send again. Okay. I think there's an error somewhere here. Four, or giving in a 4. So why is this error actually? Okay, task and then description. So what is actually the problem? Task title required, that's few tasks, 4 characters long. I think, did I save everything? Task. Create token nodes, create tasks, validation register. Let me see if I'm using the correct one. Create task validation register. Yes, it's correct. Yeah, go ahead. I think you have something to say.
Okay, I think in the validation rules, you check for not empty instead of empty.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think that may be the case. Let's make the errors. Task title must be at least 4 characters long. Okay. The task description required. Okay. It's empty, characters of 20. Task description must be at least description. Okay. Let's make it some like this. And then task title must be at least 4 characters. And then let's add like this. Sorry, please. We'll be done in a few seconds. I think we're getting this error here. Okay, let's check our auth validator. Not empty. Yeah. Okay. task title required, and then task title must be. Okay, and I think we figure this out. Let me just hard code this and see if this is actually the problem. Okay, this is title and not task. Title. Okay, let me just undo this. This is actually a title. The field, well, I'm spelling it. We're spelling it wrongly. Title. Okay, so now let's send this request and see. Let's do this and then send the request. Task might be at least 4 characters. Okay, so I think we're having only one error here. Okay, one error. Let's make it empty completely. Okay, now we have 2 errors. Task title required and then okay, that's good. It's working now. Then let's make it a where kind of thing and then send the request. Kaboom, our task is created. Okay, and we have the errors and array is actually null. Okay, so that's what we want to get. And then let's grab the ID of this task. Like so. This slash this ID, and then we'll send. Okay, it's a get request, not a post request actually. Errors, ID is required to get a task value. Okay. And then let's see, maybe not empty. Like this. Okay, send. Kaboom, here's our task. Okay, now we sent with an ID. Our task is here. I think everything is working as expected. And then let's see this, change this one to not empty. No, not empty. We've changed everything. And our code is working as expected. So in review, what we've done, actually, we've added Express Validator to our application. And this is the application we'll be working with till the end of this program, to the end of this course. Later on, we'll be dealing with load balancers and servers, where we can replicate our server and then create like different instances of our server, so we can create microservices for application and all of that. So later on, we learn many things. We learn DevOps and then continuous integration and continuous development, and deployment. I will add all of that. And then this is actually the basic Express Validator. We've gone far to like implement all of this and then add it to our token, auth, and then task. But if you want to add this, you can actually go to the route and then add it to your session auth, because we've not added it here, to check the register and then the username. And then let's just add it. Register, and then validate auth, like so. And then log in, and then validate auth. And we are done. This is all we need to do. So our application is fully developed it can now work in production, and everything will be very, very okay. So you can you can use our session auth and our token auth, and then which one you prefer. You can actually, next, when we get to API versioning, we'll see how we can version our session auth and then our token auth. But that's it for today. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask. Any questions so far? Okay, so in absence of any questions, we've touched data validation with Express Validator, and then we're actually done with it. In our next class, we'll look at authentication and authorization principles, handling sensitive data, preventing cross-site scripting, rate limiting, secure headers, and all of that. Thank you, and I will see you all in our next class.